Hello everyone, this is Segundo from Magic at MDC, and today we're going to go over the basics and how to get started with ZBrush. First thing, when you open ZBrush, this is what you're going to see. This is like a news window. These some of the newsletters that ZBrush wants to show you. You can go ahead and close it. Next thing, you're going to see the lightbox. The lightbox is open. This is where you'll find some of your recent projects, some tools, everything that you've been working on is going to be, you're going to be having the quick save automatically activated, and it's going to go here. So in case you lose your progress or ZBrush crashes, which it does sometimes, you will be able to find your progress here saved automatically, unless you turn it off. So let's go ahead and close the lightbox. Okay, next thing. This is your viewport, workspace, whatever you want to call it. I like to, as soon as I open it, go to Preferences and click Init ZBrush, Initialize ZBrush. Click Yes. So you can see that now our workspace is bigger. Already had like those gray edges. You can also change that from here in document and create a new document, but honestly it's just faster to do it from preferences. There's a lot of information here and it gets very confusing, so let's go slow and step by step. Let me give you a quick rundown of some of the UI that you will be needing for our first video. So like every software, you have your top menu here, but it's not exactly the same. You don't have file, edit, like you have different things, and all of these menus can be moved and put somewhere else. ZBrush menu is completely editable. You can tweak it as much as you want. In this case, you can see that I put the brush over here. There you go. If you make a change, you can always go to Preferences, Config, Restore Standard UI. You'll see that you get again those little edges, so you can click again, Initialize ZBrush. There you go. Back to start. Over here, we have Homepage, which is the window that I told you that you get when you open ZBrush. Lightbox, we already went over this, but just keep in mind that there's a lot of stuff here. There's extra materials, alphas, textures that you won't find here. So you're probably going to be using the lightbox a lot. Then you get a lot of options over here. This is the gizmo options, your brush settings. So whatever brush you're using, you can always fix some of this. Over here, these are the camera options. We are going to go over some of this in a moment. This right here is your brush, your stroke. Alpha, right now we don't have any brush selected, so no alpha. Texture and material. This is the default one. The matcap red wax. Color. Okay. And right here is where our tool menu is. So your objects, whatever you're working on ZBrush, is called a tool. Right now we don't have any tools because we haven't created any. So let's go ahead and create a new tool. We can go ahead, select, click here. Let's select the sphere. We change it to a sphere. See, we were previously here. Now let's change it to a sphere. Let's click and drag to create one. We can hold Shift to snap it and release. But what happens if I click again? I create a new sphere, and again a new sphere, and I can't really move around. Like I can. This is what is called 2.5D. I can't move the camera or anything. So we're not going to be working on this. Let's press Control N to remove anything that we have drawn. Let's go ahead again, create a sphere. And now let's go here and click Edit Object. Now we can move ahead. You can see the head right here. It shows you where your camera is facing. here you can see your silhouette. Very useful. Also depends a little bit on what version of ZBrush you are. Right now we're in 2020. If you have a previous one, you might not see this, but it's just a convenience. We can go ahead and select the brush. Right now we're in the standard brush, but if we click and try to edit it, we're gonna get this message. That means we need to make this sphere a polymesh 3D. So let's click here, make polymesh 3D. And now we can start sculpting. Okay, so this is our tool. Next up is subtools. So inside of your tool, you can have multiple subtools. Let me go ahead, append, that's to add another subtool. Let's create another sphere. And let's move it over here. Let's make it smaller. So you can see that now we can actually move. And now we can see that we have two spheres. So how do we move our camera? Okay, so just to rotate around the object that we are focused on, you just have to click and drag outside of your subtool. So if I click and drag inside of it, we're gonna sculpt, click outside of it, rotate. You wanna pan around, we have to hold Alt and click and drag. So rotate, just click, drag, pan, Alt, plus click and drag. Zoom, you gotta hold Control, right click, and move from left to right. Also very important, if you're in a situation like this where there's nowhere to click, you can always click on this little edge. There's this line here. You click outside of that. No, it doesn't matter if you're clicking on the object. You are going to be able to move and zoom. At any time, if you lose your object, you can press F and you'll focus on it. Your subtool. You'll focus on it. Let's quickly go over some of this. Perspective mode, on or off. So you're gonna be switching this on and off while you're modeling. If you want to have the floor just as a reference. This one is the same thing as panning in a normal way. Zooming, same thing as Control, right click and move, and rotate. Also, whenever you're rotating, you can hold Shift to snap it into different angles. By clicking here, you can see your wireframe. This makes every object, every subtool except the one you have selected, transparent. Solo, it isolates the object you have selected, and expose. So it separates your object. So you can, for example, you wanna do some tweaks in this part, but you can't because it's touching there, that side. So you can click it, edit it, and then send it back again. Now you can see that it's inside the other object. Okay, so let's quickly go back to our previous subtool. You can always click to change the subtool. If I'm in this subtool and I try to work on this one, nothing will happen. I have to click it and then move to that one. Same thing here. I can make it disappear by clicking the eye. If I have them all off and I select one, it will appear. So if you have something selected, like a subtool selected, and you click the eye, it will not disappear. Right here, this little line with the orange box here is our undo history. Everything that you do creates an undo history, and you get a lot of them. Like it actually gets really big. That you gotta keep that in mind, because when this gets really big, it might slow down your computer or even crash ZBrush. So you gotta be careful with that. So let's do a lot of different changes, and you can see I have 27 changes. Keep going. I have 37. And the cool thing about this is that you keep everything that you've done. So I can actually go back all the way to the start, and now our sphere is completely as it was when we just created it. All right, here in Subtool, you have a lot of options regarding just the subtools. So again, we can change the name, send every subtool into a lower subdivision level. We'll go over that in a second. You can copy it, paste it after you copy it. You can duplicate it. So let's create a new one. Let's move it out of there. There you go, duplicate. You can obviously delete it. Again, deleting, it tells you this is not undoable. So no matter if you can like store a lot of undo points, this will not change. You can combine multiple subtools. If you click on merge down, this will combine whatever you have selected with the subtool below it. So let's merge it down. Tells you this is not undoable. So basically, if I press Control C now, the one that was merged to this one will disappear. So let's go back. You can split it. Again, we won't go over everything because you can see there's a lot of options here, but we'll go over the basics. Let's move over to geometry. In ZBrush, you actually work with a lot of subdivision. Not like Maya, where you have to try to keep it, like if you go over the million subdivision, it will start to slow down. ZBrush can work with a lot more subdivisions. You can actually have multiple subtools with millions of subdivisions. Of course, your computer has to be able to handle it, but it's not like ridiculously heavy. And you do that, you can see that right now we have active points is the points that our currently selected subtool has, and total points is the total of all our subtools combined. So if we click divide, you can see that our subtool now has 32,000 points. You can see here. The more points you have, the smoother, let's add another one, the smoother your sculpting will be. But of course, the heavier the model also will be. Let's add a couple subdivisions. Whenever you add a subdivision, you can see right here that you have 4 subdivisions, and you can actually move in between them. Also, you can do something in your first subdivision level, move to the 4th, do something over there, and then go back. Like you can switch between them. Lower res, high res. You can always delete the lower subdivisions, freeze subdivision levels. You might want to do those in some cases. We're not gonna go over those right now, but maybe in another video. So let's go over some of the brushes. You have tons and tons of brushes. You can create your brushes. You can get a lot of brushes from the internet, but it's a similar thing to Photoshop. Like you can actually do everything with just a couple of them. In my opinion, and this is very personal, but in my opinion, the best ones, or at least the ones that I use the most, are clay buildup, which you can see it adds clay into our object, and if you click and drag, it adds. If you hold Alt, it removes. Them standard. Let's see if I can find it here. Them standard is like basically like a line. Same thing. This one, if you click and drag, if you click and draw on your model, it will remove, like it will go inward. It will remove clay. If you hold Alt, it will make an edge, and it will add. So it's the other way around the other one. This one is very good to do like very strong edges. Let's see, the move tool. You're gonna use this one a lot. Basically, it does what it says it does. It moves part of your clay around. I call it clay, which obviously is polygons, but it behaves like if you were sculpting with clay, basically. Again, we can change the draw size, make it smaller, affect a smaller area, or we can make it very big and will affect a lot. And with any brush, holding shift, you can see that it changes into smooth. And it basically smooths out your model. You gotta be very careful with this, because if you're modeling and you're adding a lot, you're adding details, and then you smooth, you're gonna lose all those details. And I also really like the HPolish. Let me see if I can find it. Here, HPolish. This one basically removes clay and makes it flat. Very good to do rocks. If you hold Alt, it adds clay. Also, all of these have different shortcuts that you'll probably have to learn, because it's very, very slow to have to look for them. So for example, B, C, and B goes to clay buildup, which honestly is probably the one that I use the most. You can see here that below it we have the stroke. We can change it to something like this, and back, and the alpha. By default, the clay buildup uses this square alpha. It's useful for some stuff. I personally like to change it to alpha 6. Right here we have our material. This is the default one. I really don't like it. I like to go with a madcap gray or a basic material. And you can see that if I try to add some clay in this subdivision level, let's see our polygons, it doesn't look good, because we don't have enough polygons. So if I press Ctrl D, I add subdivision. You can see how those polygons behave smoother now. Well, you can see our strokes become smoother that way. But you gotta be careful with that. The idea is that you work on a subdivision level until you can't work on that subdivision level anymore. So you gotta work on your lowest subdivision level as much as you can before moving to the next one. One big thing that I haven't talked about yet is symmetry. So let's go ahead and make our sphere symmetrical again. If you press X on your keyboard, you'll activate symmetry. So everything that you do now will happen in both sides. Very useful. You always want to try to work with symmetry, at least at first, because it cuts your work in half, basically. So you work with symmetry as much as you can before turning it off and doing any changes that you need. Okay, so let's do something here. Let's say we want to add some horns to this character, but it's not very precise. One thing we can do is masking. So if you hold Control, you can see that our brush turns into a mask, into mask pen in this case. And if you paint on your model, you will be masking. You hold Control plus Alt, you paint out the mask. And if you hold Control and click outside of your model, you will invert the mask. So now that I have my mask area, I can move it out, create some horns here. fine. Once we're happy with it, we can control and drag it outside of our model to remove the mask. And it's not looking good because we're basically stretching the polygons. See, these polygons are nice and square, and these ones are getting completely stretched. There's not enough divisions in this part for us to do that. So one way to fix that is to go into geometry and work with Dynamesh. Basically, you give it a resolution and turn Dynamesh on. What Dynamesh does is, based on these parameters, it creates extra polygons in your model. So if I drag this out, you'll see that it gets all stretched, right? Even if I have Dynamesh on. Now, if I hold Control and click and drag outside of my if I'm removing a mask, you can see how it creates new polygons here. So this is a very good way to actually make extra geometry. Also, basically, Dynamesh tries to, if you have like two different pieces of geometry put together, it's gonna like melt them together. So let's try to get rid of this awful geometry we made here, and you can see how it like kind of melts together. Here you can bring these two parts together and they get welded. One big thing is that I had this question, and I always hear this question too. When do you add subdivisions, and when do you work with Dynamesh? Basically, the way that I do it is I start with Dynamesh and I work as much as I can with Dynamesh. You can always increase the resolution a little bit. Don't go super crazy with this because your poly count is gonna go through the roof and you're probably gonna crash your computer. But again, work as much as you can with Dynamesh. Once you're done with your general shape, if you're not gonna be like adding extra things like this that you'll probably need that you'll need extra geometry, then you can go ahead and turn it off. And this, you turn it off and you start working with subdivision. And again, always work as much as you can in a subdivision level before moving to the next one. Also, always focus on the general shape first. Don't bother with the details. Find your landmarks first. Once you are good with that, then start moving into the next step. Okay, we turned off Dynamesh, right? We are not going to be using it again, but we are left with this terrible geometry. What do we do? Or like it's super heavy and unnecessarily heavy. We can actually go ahead and use Remesh. And click it, see what we get. This basically tries to make a better geometry for your model. Actually, this is very good. This is a very good geometry for this weird thing we came up with. Okay, let's say we're happy with their model, or we want to stop working for today and save it. The way we do it is either going to document save, but that's gonna save everything. It's gonna save our history, it's gonna save our materials, our selection, everything. And usually it's a very heavy file and very prone to errors. Sometimes they get very, very heavy because mostly because of the undo history, and your computer is not able to open it again. So it is recommended to save the tool and not the project. You can always save the project, but always save the tool too. That means you're only saving this. You're only saving your guy here. You have to go here to Tool, Save As, look for your folder. Weird. and click save. If you want to load it, let's go here. Let's go to the spheres. And let's load our tool. Go load tool, open. See, we have it again. So we have it over here and we have it over here. And finally, let's make a quick render of it by clicking here. Right now, we don't have like materials or paint or color or anything, but this is the way you would do a quick render of it. All right, I think that's enough for the basics. Thank you for watching.